so far, so publicly that you just snapped? I never thought I was the vengeful type, but then Tiffany started her public shaming campaign, and I finally decided to give her a taste of her own incredibly bitter medicine. For months, my girlfriend Tiffany had this habit. Everywhere we went, everywhere, she'd weaponize public humiliation against me. It was like a game to her, making sure strangers knew I was too cheap to treat her properly or that she deserved better than me. At the mall, she'd point out some designer bag, then loudly declare to the salesperson that I was the reason she couldn't have nice things, despite me, an electrician, making decent money. She'd literally stand in the middle of stores, crying about how all her friends' boyfriends bought them jewelry weekly, while I acted like spending a dime on her was agonizing. She'd even tell random women in restaurants they were lucky their men valued them enough for expensive meals, while she suffered with someone who dared suggest splitting a check. The Valentine's Day roses from the grocery store? Yeah, those didn't go over well. She left them on the restaurant table, told our waiter I didn't think she was worth real flowers, and then took pictures of the abandoned bouquet. She sent those photos to her group chat, captioned with "This is what dating a cheapskate looks like." My stomach would churn every time she compared me to her friends' boyfriends, listing their expensive gifts right in front of everyone, while sneering at the handmade birthday card I'd given her instead of jewelry. She actually kept a spreadsheet on her phone, a literal spreadsheet, of everything her friends' boyfriends bought them, and she'd pull it out weekly to demonstrate how far behind I was in the boyfriend rankings. The final straw came at her sister's engagement party. Tiffany announced to her entire family that she'd never have a nice ring like that because I believed love shouldn't cost money. The looks I got, pity, disappointment, burned into me. She declared that real men understood providing meant buying whatever their girlfriend wanted. No questions, no budgets. When I tried to explain I was saving for our future apartment, she just scoffed. "Excuses for being stingy," she said. "Future plans don't matter if I'm unhappy now." That was it. Something inside me just broke. A cold, calculated anger started to simmer. Tiffany needed to experience what public shaming about money really felt like. My revenge campaign started subtly. At dinner with friends, I'd casually drop how Tiffany had just spent $300 on face cream while complaining we couldn't afford vacations. I'd tell them she insisted on the most expensive wine, yet contributed nothing to our shared bills. At the mall, I'd inform salespeople that Tiffany expected gifts, but hadn't bought me anything in 2 years, not even a birthday card. When she dragged me shopping, I'd loudly tell other customers in line that she'd maxed out 3 credit cards on clothes she wore once, all while expecting me to cover every single living expense. Then I started comparing her to my friends' girlfriends. In front of everyone, I'd list how Jake's girlfriend cooked him dinner nightly, while Tiffany ordered takeout on my card. How Tom's girlfriend surprised him with thoughtful homemade gifts, while Tiffany only cared about price tags. I'd point out how Bill's girlfriend worked 2 jobs to contribute equally, while Tiffany quit her part-time job because working was too stressful. Oh, and remember Tiffany's spreadsheet? I made my own. A glorious spreadsheet detailing how much my friends' girlfriends contributed to relationships versus how much they took. I showed it to anyone who'd look. At her friend's birthday party, I announced Tiffany couldn't afford a real gift because she'd spent all her money on herself again, then helpfully detailed the $400 shoes she'd bought the day before, explaining the pathetic card she'd given her friend was actually one she'd stolen from my desk drawer. I explained to the whole party, very calmly, that Tiffany believed relationships meant men paying for everything, while women just existed beautifully. Her friends started to notice a pattern, all right, but the real satisfaction, the true emotional punch, came when I started refusing to pay for anything in the most public way possible. When restaurant bills arrived, I'd loudly announce I was only paying for my food because Tiffany had publicly shamed me for not buying her a designer purse the very morning. I'd recount the entire humiliating story to the confused waiter while Tiffany sat there, mortified, slowly turning crimson. At movie theaters, I'd buy one ticket, telling the cashier my girlfriend thought I was too cheap anyway, so she could buy her own. When she inevitably couldn't pay, I'd explain to everyone in line that she'd spent all her money on makeup, expecting me to cover entertainment. Then came the double date, the absolute climax. The bill landed on the table, and I announced, in a voice clear enough for the entire restaurant to hear, that since Tiffany had told everyone at lunch that I was a pathetic provider, she could provide for herself tonight. I paid for my meal and for Jack's and Chloe's meals, but I left Tiffany's portion untouched. Unpaid. Tiffany sat frozen, her face slowly draining of color. Jax and Chloe stared at their plates, an awkward silence hanging heavy in the air. The waiter, bless his heart, stood there, completely bewildered. I felt this rush of pure, unadulterated satisfaction watching Tiffany's face turn bright red as the realization dawned. I was actually going to do this. The manager appeared, drawn by the commotion. "Is there a problem with the check?" he asked, his voice calm, but his eyes scanning the scene. I explained with perfect composure, my portion and my friend's portions are covered, but my girlfriend needs to handle her own meal. The manager nodded slowly, his eyebrows raised as he looked at Tiffany. Her hands trembled, gripping the edge of the table. Her designer purse, the very one she'd shamed me over, sat right there, visible to everyone. Other diners at nearby tables started to notice. Finally, Tiffany spoke, her voice shaking. She told the manager she didn't have her wallet. I knew it was a lie. I'd seen her purse. The manager, ever professional, suggested an ATM or a payment app. Tiffany's eyes filled with tears, tears of rage, of humiliation. Jax, bless his kind heart, quietly offered to cover her portion, just to end the agony. But I stopped him. "No, Jax," I said. "Tiffany needs to learn that actions have consequences." The manager shifted, glancing towards the kitchen where other servers had stopped to watch. Then Tiffany stood up abruptly, fumbling through her purse before slamming her credit card onto the table. "Charge the whole thing to my card," she hissed, her voice laced with pure venom. She turned to me, genuine hatred blazing in her eyes. "You're a cruel, petty man who just humiliated me for the last time." She paid, grabbed her coat, and stormed out, the door slamming behind her, rattling the windows. The manager processed the payment. Jax and Chloe both looked at me like I'd just kicked a puppy. Jax quietly asked, "Did you really need to take it that far in front of us?" I started explaining, my voice a torrent of pent-up frustration. Every restaurant, every store where she'd called me cheap, pathetic. The grocery store roses. The engagement party. Chloe cut me off. "I get it, Tiffany was wrong. But what you just did, it felt mean in a different way." She said she was uncomfortable. We left in awkward silence. I drove home alone, a weird mix of satisfaction and emptiness swirling inside me. My phone started blowing up. Texts from Dakota, Tiffany's friend, calling me every name in the book. She said Tiffany was at her apartment crying. I turned my phone off, poured myself a drink. The apartment felt quiet, empty. That satisfaction from the restaurant, it was already fading, replaced by something else. I stared at the wall, then turned my phone back on, only to see 20 more messages. Off it went again. The next morning, it was 17 missed calls and 32 texts, mostly Tiffany's friends, calling me abusive and controlling. A few from mutual friends, asking for my side. I sent a simple text back. Tiffany spent months publicly shaming me about money. I just showed her what that actually felt like. Some responded with support, others silence. At work, my friend Vladimir noticed my mood. Over lunch, I told him the whole story, the revenge campaign, the restaurant incident. He listened, silent. Then he asked the question I hadn't expected. Did humiliating Tiffany actually make you feel better, or just make you feel like her? I got defensive, insisting it was different. She started it. I was just giving her a taste of her own medicine, I argued. Vladimir just shook his head, taking another bite of his sandwich. He didn't say anything else, but I knew. He thought I was wrong. Tiffany called from Dakota's phone that afternoon. Her voice was raw from crying, but hard, angry. She accused me of being vindictive, of planning to destroy her publicly. She said she never wanted to see me again. That's fine with me, I shot back. Since you spent our entire relationship making me feel worthless, we can both move on. She hung up without a goodbye. I sat staring at my phone. That evening, Jack showed up with beer. He said he'd been my friend for 10 years and had never seen me act so cold. He was worried I'd turned into someone mean. I defended myself, pulling up screenshots of Tiffany's group chat messages, her trashing me, her spreadsheet. Jax scrolled through them, his expression serious. He admitted she was toxic and materialistic. Then he said, fighting toxicity with more toxicity just made you toxic, too. He asked if I really felt good about what I did, or if I was just telling myself I should. I had no good answer. We just sat there, drinking beer, while I tried to figure out what I was feeling. Days turned into weeks. Our friend group fractured. Some said I did the right thing. Others said I went too far. Chloe texted me privately, saying she understood why I was mad, but the restaurant scene felt planned out and mean. I texted back that Tiffany's behavior was planned and mean too, and I just wanted her to know what it felt like. She didn't respond. I wondered if I was losing friends. Then I saw Dakota's vague Facebook post about toxic masculinity and financial abuse, clearly aimed at me. My finger hovered over the comment button, desperate to post my evidence. But Vladimir texted, warning me not to get into a social media war. It just makes everything worse, he said. I listened, but I screenshot everything anyway. A few days later, Willow, Tiffany's sister, called. I almost didn't answer, expecting a lecture, but she said she felt uncomfortable at her engagement party, and that my revenge campaign crossed lines that couldn't be uncrossed. She said, both Tiffany and I were wrong in different ways. She hoped we could both learn and move on. I apologized for the drama affecting her party. She appreciated it, wished me well, and hung up. That weekend, alone in my apartment, I couldn't shake the image of Tiffany's face at the restaurant. The satisfaction was gone, replaced by a strange emptiness. Maybe I thought I just became the thing I hated. My own spreadsheet, that petty document, felt small and calculated. I closed the app, threw my phone on the couch. At work, my mind kept wandering. I messed up wiring a circuit. My supervisor pulled me aside. He'd learned the hard way, he said, that revenge might feel good when you're doing it, but it usually leaves everyone feeling like crap afterward. I nodded. He was right. Tiffany texted me from her number a few days later, asking to meet to divide our stuff. Cold, business-like texts. We met at a coffee shop. She looked tired, puffy-eyed. For the first time since the revenge began, I felt a pang of guilt. She slid a handwritten list across the table, neat and organized. We went through it, discussing logistics like strangers doing a business deal. As we stood to leave, she stopped me. Why did you have to embarrass me so publicly instead of just breaking up privately? She asked. I told her she'd embarrassed me publicly for months, and I wanted her to understand how that felt. Maybe you'll think twice before treating your next boyfriend like a walking ATM. She looked at me, a long, quiet stare. You're right, she said. I was wrong about the public shaming, but what you did was planned out and cruel in a way my behavior never was. We were both terrible people who brought out the worst in each other. Maybe we should just accept that. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. We walked out to separate cars without a goodbye. That conversation haunted me. Tiffany admitted she was wrong, something she never did. Had my revenge stopped her from truly learning by giving her my cruelty to focus on? Vladimir said I was overthinking it, that toxic people rarely change. But I couldn't shake the feeling I'd missed a chance to be the bigger person. Jax and Chloe invited me over. Pizza, video games. They were careful not to mention Tiffany. But then Chloe asked directly, "Do you regret how things ended?" I thought about it. "I regret the relationship," I said honestly. "But I'm not sure if I regret the revenge part yet." They exchanged a look. Silence. I spent hours planning that revenge campaign. Lunch breaks at work, making notes. Late nights, screenshotting group chats. That stupid spreadsheet. Timing my public attacks for maximum embarrassment. All that mental energy could have gone into breaking up, moving on, working on my certification. I wasted weeks on petty revenge, and now I felt stupid and small. A few days later, Anita, a mutual friend, called. She wanted to hear my side. I met her for coffee, phone loaded with screenshots. Tiffany's group chat messages, the grocery store roses, her spreadsheet. Anita scrolled, her eyes widening. "I had no idea," she whispered. Tiffany always played the victim, never mentioning her own behavior. Anita said she understood why I snapped and felt bad for judging me. Her validation felt good at first, but then it felt hollow. It didn't change the fact that I chose the worst possible way to handle it. Yeah, Tiffany was wrong, but so was I. She also told me many friends were privately sympathetic to me, but thought my revenge went too far. I realized I had put them in an impossible position. That wasn't fair. The box of my stuff from Tiffany's place arrived via Jax. Going through it made me sad. My coffee mug, my hoodie, a framed photo of us from when things were good. Happy faces. I looked at it, this wave of sadness washing over me. I threw the photo in the trash outside Jax's. 2 blocks later, I turned around, fished it out. Destroying it felt too dramatic, too final, like I was trying too hard to prove I was over it. Back at work, I started to focus. Vladimir said he was proud I hadn't escalated things further online. "You're handling the aftermath better than you handled the actual breakup," he joked. I admitted I was just tired. 2 days later, I ran into Dakota at the grocery store. She called my name, said Tiffany was a mess, and maybe I should reach out. I told her Tiffany and I were done. No point. She should focus on being a good friend to Tiffany, not trying to get us back together. The ship had sailed and sunk. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about what Dakota said. Was Tiffany really struggling? Or was Dakota guilt-tripping me? I looked at Tiffany's Instagram for the first time. Sad quotes about toxic relationships and betrayal. Part of me wanted to reach out, but the smarter part knew it would restart the whole cycle of drama. I closed Instagram. The next day, Jax called. Chloe ran into Tiffany. Tiffany asked about me. That shocked me. She even told Chloe she'd been reflecting on how materialistic she was, wondering if her behavior pushed me to react the way I did. My jaw practically hit the floor. Tiffany was self-reflecting. I admitted I was doing the same about my revenge. Jax said maybe we were both growing from this mess. That conversation stayed with me. I decided to write Tiffany a letter, to say what I couldn't in person, that she was wrong to shame me, but I was wrong to plan calculated revenge. I wrote several drafts, trying to strike the right tone. Eventually, I realized there was no perfect way, so I just sent a simple text. I apologized for the cruelty of my methods, but stood by my right to defend myself. A few hours later, her response came. Her own apology for the public shaming, the comparisons. She admitted insecurity and materialism. We brought out the worst in each other, her text read, and we should both be glad the relationship ended before things got even uglier. I read it twice. Agreed. We texted back and forth for 20 minutes, the most honest conversation we'd ever had. It didn't fix anything, but it felt like closure. Real closure. Vladimir asked what I learned. I chewed my sandwich. Being right about her behavior doesn't mean my response was okay. She was wrong. But I was also wrong to plan out this whole revenge thing, humiliating her in nasty ways. 2 wrongs don't make a right. They just make both people look bad and drag innocent people into the mess. He nodded. That's the hard part about breakups, recognizing your own mistakes even when the other person started it. I started thinking about my next relationship. What kind of boyfriend did I want to be? What warning signs did I need to watch for? The public shaming should have been an immediate deal breaker. Instead, I stayed hoping she'd change. The resentment built until I snapped. Next time, I'd have the guts to end things at the first sign of disrespect. I'd look for someone who shared my values about money, who contributed, who didn't need constant expensive gifts. 2 weeks later, I ran into Tiffany at a mutual friend's party. My stomach dropped, but she just gave me a small nod. We avoided each other for an hour. Then, at the bar, we made eye contact. "Hi," she said, quiet. "Hi," I replied. We had 3 minutes of polite small talk. No drama. No tension. It felt like progress. Jack said he was relieved. Our drama had stressed everyone out. I felt bad. I apologized. "That's what friends do," he said. "They tell you when you're screwing up and hope you listen eventually." One night, sitting alone, it clicked. The revenge wasn't about teaching Tiffany a lesson. It was about making myself feel powerful after months of feeling small. Humiliating her was my way of proving I wasn't some pathetic guy who'd take her abuse forever. Understanding my reasons didn't excuse it, but it helped me see patterns I needed to work on. Vladimir introduced me to his cousin Pierre, who'd also done some petty revenge after a breakup. We bonded over the stupid things people do when emotions take over. Pierre said his therapist told him revenge is about trying to transfer your pain onto someone else, but it never actually makes you feel better. I thought about that a lot. I started saving for that apartment. Without the relationship drama, it was so much easier. Tiffany's main complaint was I was cheap. I wasn't. I was responsible, planning for the future. I should have found a partner who appreciated that. 3 months post-breakup, I saw Tiffany on Instagram dating someone new. A photo of them at a fancy restaurant. I waited for jealousy. It never came. Good for her, honestly. I hoped she'd learn something. Or that this new guy was rich enough her materialism wouldn't be an issue. Either way, it wasn't my problem anymore. Jack set me up on a double date with Chloe's friend, Gracie. She was nice. Normal. When the waiter brought menus, I caught myself watching to see if she'd order the most expensive thing. I realized I was being unfair. She ordered something mid-range, chatted normally. When the check came, she pulled out her wallet, suggested splitting it down the middle. I felt relief, but also guilt for expecting problems that weren't there. She was saving for a trip to visit her sister. She had her own financial goals. We exchanged numbers. I drove home, thinking about how I was bringing baggage from Tiffany into situations with women who hadn't done anything wrong. I needed to give new people a fair chance. My supervisor offered me training for a higher certification, a raise. It felt productive, building something instead of tearing someone down. I was investing in my future. Dakota texted again, wanting to talk. She apologized for being harsh after the restaurant incident. She'd only heard Tiffany's side. She now knew the full context. We agreed everyone made mistakes. She even said Tiffany was doing some self-reflection. It felt good to know people could move past the initial drama. Gracie and I went on more dates. She had her own career, her own money. No comparisons, no social media validation. She'd buy her own ticket, split checks, or take turns paying without keeping score. The difference between dating someone secure and someone insecure was night and day. She'd been in a toxic relationship too. We were both taking it slow, being careful. Then Tiffany texted again, "Can we meet for coffee?" A real conversation about what went wrong. I stared at the message. Old wounds. But I was curious. We met. She looked different, less made up. She told me she'd been in therapy, working on her materialism and insecurity. Her therapist helped her understand her need for expensive things came from feeling valueless. She apologized for the public shaming, admitted it was emotionally abusive. I was genuinely surprised by her self-reflection. I apologized for my calculated revenge, admitted it was cruel and vindictive. We had an honest conversation, laughed about the spreadsheet war, the restaurant standoffs. It felt good to acknowledge the absurdity without the anger. She mentioned her new boyfriend, how he was helping her see relationships differently. I told her I was seeing someone too, much more compatible. We both agreed we were wrong for each other. The conversation gave me closure. We weren't getting back together or becoming friends, but we could be civil adults who learned from our mistakes. I learned things about myself, how I handled conflict, my boundaries. I'd let things build up, then exploded. Next time, I'd communicate better, walk away sooner. I told Gracie about the revenge campaign, the whole ugly story. She listened without judging. She shared her own story of acting out after a toxic relationship. We bonded over learning from past mistakes. She appreciated my honesty. I felt relieved. A few weeks later, I saw Tiffany at a wedding. My stomach dropped, but then I realized it was okay. She looked lighter, happier. She introduced me to her boyfriend, Julius. We made small talk. It felt normal. She was happy for me about my apartment. I was happy for her about her new job. We talked for maybe 5 minutes. At the reception, I watched her dance with Julius. She was laughing, relaxed. He kissed her forehead. She looked genuinely happy. I felt genuinely happy for her. She looked different with him, less tense. I hoped she'd learned from our mistakes, wasn't putting pressure on him. Driving home, I told Gracie everything, the whole ugly story again. She just listened, nodded. When I finished, she was quiet. I can see how much you've grown, she said. The guy who planned revenge campaigns doesn't sound like the guy sitting next to me now. I told her I was committed to handling things differently. No revenge, no public humiliation. Just honest talking and the guts to walk away if things got toxic. She was committed to the same. That night, I kept thinking, if I could go back, I'd tell my past self to end things the first time she publicly shamed me. Revenge feels good in the moment, but leaves you empty. Humiliating someone else doesn't heal your own hurt. The right person won't make you feel small. It's better to be alone than in a relationship that brings out your worst. 6 months passed. I barely recognized the person I'd been during the Tiffany mess. My savings account grew. I was buying that apartment I'd always talked about. Gracie texted me. Dating her was easy. No fighting, no scorekeeping. She didn't compare me. The whole Tiffany situation felt like it happened to someone else. The call came from my realtor. My offer on the apartment was accepted. I yelled with excitement. Gracie came with me to the closing, held my hand. We walked through the empty rooms, planning. She mentioned moving in eventually. It was casual, honest. This apartment was mine, bought on my terms. Not to prove anything to Tiffany. At my housewarming party, Chloe said how nice it was to hang out without walking on eggshells. Vladimir toasted to new beginnings. I felt a wave of gratitude for friends who stuck by me. Gracie and I fell into an easy routine. No drama. We talked like adults. I realized how much energy I'd wasted on that toxic situation. With Gracie, I just focused on being a good partner. We started talking about long-term plans. Kids someday. I could picture it with her. I ran into Tiffany at the grocery store. No awkwardness. We chatted about my new apartment, her new job. She was happy with Julius. I was happy with Gracie. We both agreed we'd moved on, found people who brought out the good in us. We wished each other well. The revenge campaign was a mistake I'd always regret, but it was part of a messy journey that taught me what I actually needed in a partner. We'd both grown. Sometimes that's the best ending to a bad situation. I learned that 2 wrongs don't make a right. They just make both of you look bad. Dating Gracie taught me what a healthy relationship looks like. I don't keep spreadsheets or plan revenge. I communicate. I notice my triggers. The revenge campaign was cruel and calculated, but at least I learned from it. I know now that being right doesn't give you permission to be mean. Proving a point isn't worth destroying your own character. Relationships should make you want to be better. My life now is completely different. I have my apartment. Gracie and I are building something real. My friends stuck by me. Work is great. The whole revenge thing taught me the best way to deal with a bad relationship isn't to destroy the other person publicly. It's to just walk away and build a better life. We're both happier now than we ever were together. So, tell me, have you ever found yourself in a situation where you felt like you had to retaliate, even if it meant becoming someone you didn't recognize? And did it ultimately make you feel better, or just lead to more regret? I'm genuinely curious to hear your thoughts.